Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Doubtful Conversations. I'm your host, Tyler Ferguson, and before we get started today, I just wanted to apologize to you all for taking so long to create another video. I know it's been a couple of weeks, and you've probably wondered, is this just one more YouTube channel or one more podcast that started out with a few episodes and then is going to fizzle out? And the answer to that question is no, but I have been very busy. Our family's been in the process of moving houses to a bigger house in the same town we're in to allow all of our kids to have a little bit more space and not be on top of each other all the time. And then I've also been in the middle of working on my doctorate degree, which I try to do in the middle of everything else we have going on. So it's been a busy couple of weeks and just haven't gotten around to making a video. But my hope would be to not have too many 2 to 3 week gaps in content and to be able to do this once a week if possible. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the content. Today is going to be the second episode of 2 episodes on a video that I'm responding to by a YouTube atheist called a YouTube atheist whose name is FriendlyAtheist. And FriendlyAtheist put out a YouTube video that is... So today's episode, So let's go and get straight to today's episode. In the episode today, we are going to be finishing up a video that I started about a month ago, and it's a response video to a YouTube atheist named FriendlyAtheist. And FriendlyAtheist put out a video back on May 7th, 2020, called 10 Reasons People Are Leaving Christianity. 10 Reasons People Are Leaving Christianity. And I thought, gee, okay, if this guy kind of has his pulse on why people are leaving Christianity, perhaps some of these reasons might apply to someone you know, or perhaps one of these reasons kind of encapsulates why you're doubting your Christian faith. And so I thought maybe we could talk about these. I think some of them are good. I think others, I think he shortchanges Christians a little bit, because I think some of these reasons are a little lame and are a little surface level, and I think too highly of Christians who might be struggling with doubt to think that there are too many people leaving the faith over some of these issues. However, if some of these issues speak to you, and if these are struggles that you have, hopefully this will help you out a little bit. I will say for our podcast listeners that and our YouTube listeners, I'm going to be speeding this video up at 1.5, so he's going to be talking a little fast. I do this just so we can get through the content and not have a 2-hour-long episode. So without further ado, here is number 5. By the way, I've linked to, in the description of this video, the first video we did on the first 4 reasons people are leaving Christianity. So here is number 5. Let's take a listen.
5. Kids. Even if you left church as you grew older, there was always a trend of people returning to church when they got married and had children. It kind of made sense. You wanted to raise your kids in church because you believed that was the right thing to do. It's where they learn ethics and morals. But going back to the hypocrisy thing, do you really believe you're helping your kids by having someone teach them myths about how the world was created? Or that God will send them to hell if they don't worship Jesus? Or that their religious beliefs are right but everyone else's are wrong? Do you think the Catholic Church is really the epitome of ethics these days? Do you really want to leave your kid alone with the priest? If you want to teach your kids to be decent people, there are plenty of other ways to do it these days. Also, when you have kids, it's hard to find time to go out at all. Church used to be worth it for a lot of people. But that seems to be happening less and less, partly because of all the other things I'm mentioning here, and partly because our society is just getting more isolated. We don't gather as much as we used to, period, even outside a pandemic. Number 6.
Okay, let's go ahead and stop it right there. Comment on this just a little bit. So he says, kids are a big reason why Christians are leaving Christianity. And he gives a couple of reasons, but everything that he says seems to kind of center around and revolve around this idea that people used to take their kids to church in order to learn ethics and morals, good behavior, how they should act, the right things, the wrong things to do, and that now there's other places to learn that. And so why waste a perfectly good Sunday morning going to church whenever your kids can learn morals and ethics everywhere else? Okay. It's true that there are a lot of places where your kids can learn morals and ethics, including church, but certainly my kids learn morals and ethics, I would say primarily from the home, from my wife and I, right? And they also learn it from school and all of that kind of stuff. But church is certainly a place that can help with that. However, here's where he gets this wrong. And if you're saying, you know what, I'm going to give up on Christianity, or I think I can walk away because I can teach my kids right behavior other places. That's true. You certainly can. But here's the problem. Christianity and going to church isn't about learning how to act. Right? Like most Christian parents know this. As a Christian parent, I don't send my kids to church primarily so they'll learn how to behave. They don't have behavioral problems, and my solution to that isn't, when they do have behavioral problems, isn't, you know what, let's just go to church and that church will teach you how to act right. I don't think really any Christians actually go to church for this purpose. In fact, I've never heard of anyone say that that's why they go to church. Why do Christian parents take their kids to church? Well, I can speak for myself and basically every single Christian parent I've ever met in my life, and that is we take our kids to church so that they can learn about Jesus, so that they can grow closer to God, and so that they can be around other like-minded kids and families. They worship the Lord there and they learn about God. I think that's why we take our kids to church. So this idea that we're going to give up on church because there's other places to learn morals, sure, there are other places to learn morals. However, one, church is a good place to do that. And two, again, that's not why we send our kids to church. Like with so many of these reasons he gives, he says these are reasons people are leaving the church. The problem that I have is that I have yet to meet a Christian who sends their kids, or an ex-Christian who used to send their kids to church just to learn how to behave. I don't think that's actually, I'm not sure that's actually a thing. He also says that church used to be worth it because we were a connected society and now we're more isolated. But this, again, it doesn't make sense as a reason to not go to church anymore. If we see isolation as a problem, and almost everyone, I haven't met anyone, again, I hate to keep saying I haven't met anyone, but it's true. I've never met anyone who says we're more isolated as a society. Yay, that's a good thing. And so if we're more isolated as a society, then why would we want to step back from an institution like the church who's really trying to make sure that we are not isolated from one another? Right? It doesn't make sense. It's not a solution to the problem. All right, let's keep going.
Science. Climate change is real. Most young people understand this, and they know we're in trouble if governments
a lot of Christians believe science
and yet a lot of opposition to climate science and stem cell research and evolution and how to respond to a pandemic comes from religious groups who oppose those things for reasons that have nothing to do with the facts. Even Jehovah's Witnesses oppose blood transfusions. It's not just political. At its core, science is about proving what we can and discovering evidence and asking tough questions and using all the resources at our disposal to answer them. Religion is about none of that. It's about taking things on faith and believing things even when your mind tells you they can't be true. Even if you're able to ask hard questions, you're always told the answer is to be found in one book and only one book. They're just two polar opposite ways of looking at the world, and we have far too many examples right now of where we need a scientific approach, but we're only getting a religious one. No thank you.
Okay, let's stop there. Science. I think this is a big one. And I do know people who have struggled with doubting their Christian faith because of what they say is science. And I want to make a couple clarifications here. First of all, he doesn't talk about this, but I think it's an important distinction to make. Look, Christianity is not opposed to science at all. In fact, I know a lot of Christians who, for example, believe in climate change. I know a lot of Christians who believe in evolution. These things are not anti-Christian. They're matters of opinion when it comes to scientific research, right? And so this whole idea that there's this battle between science and Christianity is false. However, there is a battle between Christianity and scientism. Now, what's the difference between science and scientism? It's a very important distinction. Science is the study of the natural world, right, using the scientific method, right? Like that's science. It's a field of inquiry where we try and discover how things are. Scientism is a lot like the religion of science in that scientism says all there is science. Science is the only way to discover truth, and anything discovered outside of science is not actually true or reliable. And this is dangerous. That's a dangerous position to hold. He says that science is about using all of our resources to answer questions. The problem is that's not what science does. Science doesn't use all of our resources to answer questions. Science uses scientific resources to answer questions. What about historical inquiry? What about philosophical inquiry? What about all of these other things that tell us truth, including religious belief and including religion? All of these areas inform our knowledge, and yet science is an important piece of that, but it's just a piece of that. He also says that we believe that one book holds all truth and blah, blah, blah. Okay, Christians don't believe this, right, about the Bible. Let me explain to you what Christians believe about the Bible, and maybe you've been kind of confused here, and you need a little bit of explanation here. Christians believe that the Bible contains truth, that everything in the Bible is true, but not all truth is in the Bible. Right? Even the Bible says this. In Romans chapter 1, Paul talks about how there's the truth in Scripture, but there's also this truth revealed around us about God in creation, right? And so certainly there is truth that science can give us. And any thinking Christian is going to tell you that, yes, the Bible is completely true, but there are other things we can learn about reality as well from looking into science and history and philosophy and whatnot. Now, if one of those truths directly contradicts Scripture, then we have a problem. But as long as those two things combine and go well together, then we don't have an issue at all. And so this conflict between science and faith is really made up. All right, let's keep going.
7. Sex. A lot of religious groups push this idea that you must be sexually abstinent until marriage, or you're broken. Right-wing Christians push for abstinence-only sex education in schools. The schools won't get federal funding unless they do that. They don't even want people learning about condoms or birth control. They definitely don't want anyone telling high schoolers about what good sex means, and how that's different for everyone, or the importance of consent, or the idea that sexual identities are on a spectrum. They think talking about it will make kids want to do it. Like if we just pretend sex doesn't exist, no one will ever think about it. Right. Those people have never met teenagers, apparently. And if we don't tell them about the gay, and we never say transgender, then everyone will just be straight and cis, and we can...
Okay, I'm going to pause this for sake of time and comment on this a little bit. Sex. Okay. Here, this bothers me about the way that atheists or the way that unbelievers talk about sex and Christianity. You hear this talk, and he alludes to it also, that somehow Christians don't talk about sex, the church never talks about sex, and we treat sex as it's this awful, horrible thing that no one ever wants to touch or talk about. That's just never been my experience in church. And honestly, that's never been my experience around other Christians. I think that Christianity holds to a certain sexual ethic that non-Christians might not agree with, namely the defining of any type of sexual activity outside of the marriage of one man and one woman as being sinful. We can argue and debate about those things, but to say that the church somehow never talks about sex, doesn't teach our kids about God's design for sex, is just false. Are there churches out there that demonize it and do that? Yeah, I'm sure there are. I've never come across one, and most Christians haven't had this experience. Again, this is a good example of the fact that I don't think there's a lot of Christians that are actually leaving the church because of this issue, because I really don't think this is an issue. Now, are there some Christians leaving the church because of the church's position on homosexuality and whatnot? Sure, certainly. That's a huge issue right now, and we'll have later videos dedicated just to that issue. But to say that the church doesn't address sex at all or demonizes sex is absolutely false. Go read the Song of Solomon in the Bible, and it will make non-Christians blush in the way that it talks about the sexual experience between men and women. So again, this is just a non-starter. We're going to skip ahead to number 8 here. Give me just a moment. All right, number 8, and then number 9 is going to be included in on this because it's basically the same.
Dating. There was a time when church was the best place to meet a potential partner. But besides the fact that a lot of people meet online now, here's a simple question. If you're single and looking to meet someone, what's the biggest deal breaker for you? There's a good chance that politics may be more important to you than religion. If you're a Democrat, for example, you might say, I cannot date a Trump voter, and vice versa. And that makes sense, right? I mean, it's not just about your feelings about Trump. It's kind of a stand-in for a lot of things you take seriously. It answers a lot of questions really fast. But if you're not that religious, and you meet someone who says, I'm Jewish, or I'm Christian but not too serious about it, or I believe in some higher power, you might just not care. A lot of labels don't come with baggage. I know a lot of atheists who date people who are not atheists. You just need to know the other person more. Or today, more than ever, you're more likely to meet someone who's just not that religious, and it's not weird. But the point is, you have so many other ways to meet people who share the values you hold dear that you don't need church to facilitate it. In fact, you may not want church to have anything to do with it. Along the same lines.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Number 9 is friends, and he says basically the same thing about friends. Like, you don't need church to make friends. There's all these other areas to do that. I'm going to speak real directly and real honestly here. If you're not a Christian, if you're not a Christian, I don't know why in the world you would want to meet someone at church in the first place, right? So I've never understood this concept of single people going to church. They don't really love God. They don't really care about the things of God. They're not Christians, but going to church because it's a great place to meet people. You see this a lot in young adults. Well, it doesn't make any sense. Again, if I'm not a Christian, I don't want to meet people at church, right? That's not my goal. And so again, I don't really think this is happening. However, if you are a Christian and that's your worldview, if you're a Christian, the Christian worldview makes up so much of who you are, right? And so if you are a Christian and you're single, I think church is actually a great place to meet someone. Just like if you're not a Christian, but let's say you really love chess, a chess club's probably a great place to meet someone, right? But this so on a much larger scale, because as a Christian, Christianity shapes every fiber of my being. And so wouldn't going to a place like church where other people share that same worldview, wouldn't it make sense that I would go there in order to meet people? So that goes with like a prospective romantic partner or with friends, right? I think again, if you're a Christian, it makes sense to go to church to find these things. If you're not a Christian, it doesn't make sense to go to church to find these things. But in terms of people leaving Christianity because they have other places to meet romantic partners and meet friends, I hate to be this blunt, but sometimes bluntness is required. If that was your reason for attending church and for worshiping God, I'm not 100% sure you ever really loved Jesus in the first place. And I say that with all respect and with all humility and with the fear of God in me, right? But those who really love the Lord, who have given their lives to Jesus, go to church to worship God. And if you find a romantic partner that you can spend the rest of your life with while doing that, then that's fantastic. But that is not the primary reason for coming to church or for being engaged with Christianity. We're Christians because we love God, right? We love the Lord. And I think that's important to remember as Christians. So we're going to skip number 9, and I'm going to get straight to number 10, and then we will close out. We will close out the video there. So let's...
Even people who are never that religious tend to go back to church for a few things. You want a priest to conduct your wedding, maybe. But not anymore. How many of us either did or know someone who paid a few bucks online to get ordained to perform a ceremony for friends of ours who are getting married? It's more meaningful since you all know each other. There are also humanist celebrants and secular celebrants and non-priests who will do that for you now. You don't need church. You want to baptize your baby? Well, that usually only happens if both partners agree, but the odds are pretty good that at least one of you doesn't take baptism seriously. You're not going to do it then, unless there's family pressure. And with more people leaving religion, we're going to see this even bigger wave of second and third generation atheists, or kids who were just raised without faith and don't attach a lot of meaning.
Okay, again, his last reason for people leaving Christianity, rituals, not needing the church to get baptized. First of all, if you're not a Christian, I don't understand why in the world you would want to get baptized. It doesn't make any sense. The only way baptism makes sense is if you're a Christian, right? And if you're only a Christian because a priest can marry you, well, again, that doesn't make sense, because I unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, as a Christian, as a pastor, I unfortunately know pastors who will marry unbelievers without questioning. Now, I would not, because I think marriage is a very sacred, holy institution between a man and a woman under God, right? And so I think that's very important. But the idea that you're a Christian because of these rituals, again, just doesn't make any sense. If you label yourself a Christian because you've always taken communion, or you were baptized or whatever, again, I want to lovingly communicate to you that I'm not sure you actually know Jesus. Because when you fall in love with Jesus, it changes your entire life. And now all of a sudden, everything you do is for him. And yeah, we mess up. Yeah, we make mistakes. Yeah, we probably do things to disappoint him. However, we live lives where we strive for those lives to be pleasing to him. And we love our Creator, who loves us back infinitely. That's Christianity. And if that's true for you, if you love Jesus and you've committed your life to following him, then I don't know how any of these 10 things can take you away from him. Now, maybe you're struggling with doubt because of one of these things. I hope that this video has maybe helped you see how minor some of these issues are in the big scheme of who Jesus is. As always, I'm here for you. I want to walk with you through your doubts and questions. If you have doubts or questions that you would like us to talk about on this channel, you can email them to doubtfulconversations@gmail.com. I would love to take your suggestions and run with those. Also, if you'd like to support this channel, you can click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner of your screen. Or if you really, really want to help us reach doubting Christians, you can go to patreon.com/doubtfulconversations and support us with as little as $1 a month, and that will unlock all sorts of really cool features for you, like early access to videos. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.